Everybody's very busy. Today, welcome, happy Friday. Today we're going to talk about Revit sharing and coordinating. So, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the Revit share coordinates. It's something that I believe everybody should know a little bit, like how it functions, because if you go to office, most cases they will use this, and sometimes they don't use it. It really depends. It can be very confusing, but if you learn how it's done, then you basically mastered share coordinates. So today's topic I'm just going to talk about is the best practice with share coordinates. Learn how to manage share coordinates from multiple Revit files, and how you reset share coordinates. If, let's say, things go really wrong, you have to know how to reset it back to like the original so that you can reapply it. Okay. And finally, if I have time, I'll go over how to use Enscape to create like a visual clash model. So, most cases, this is I took a snapshot from Autodesk's website. Project-based point, there's two of them. There's always going to be a project-based point and survey-based point, which you can see. There's a third one you cannot see, which is the origin. Okay, I will discuss like what those are. It's like project-based point is basically like, okay, you have a building, you place a base point there, that's your building base point. Survey-based point is basically whatever's in the survey. And then finally, there's one called the software origin point, which nobody can modify it, right? So if you do an export to, let's say, DWG, SketchUp, they always have an origin point. And then what happens is that is whatever is Revit export out, that's the origin point. It's going to be used for software like SketchUp or AutoCAD. Now, a couple things to kind of keep in mind is that both project's base point and survey base point, you can actually modify or change the position. So my best practice, I always tell people, is keep the project base point and survey base point as close to each other. Sometimes what happens is that if you don't use shared coordinates, both of this should be at the same location. The minute you start changing different location, what happens is that when you insert the files, let's say from AutoCAD, you use shared coordinates, it will just place it in a different location. Okay, that's one thing I find out. So keep it relatively the same. You notice that here, project-based point and survey-based point, notice that they have the same position. The only thing that's changing is that the project-based point has this true north orientation. So if you don't want to do, let's say, rotate your true north, you can use share coordinates, acquire the coordinates from the, let's say, the AutoCAD, right? What it does is that it will automatically rotate to that position. All right, Revit shared coordinates. In AutoCAD, I think everybody probably know how AutoCAD functions, right? It has this origin point. That origin point is always going to be absolute, right? So if you insert it into another CAD files, you always say, oh yeah, I want your 0, point, and then whenever I extract it in, it's always going to be that 0, point. However, you could modify that if you know your little bit AutoCAD tricks, but I won't get into that right now. Revit origin point is arbitrary, so what happens is that if you move your position around that, that's basically saying, this is my origin point. So it could be anywhere, right? Now, the nicest thing about that is that if you're using Revit, and when you try to establish files from different consultants, if the origin point moves, right, their project is not going to move, but it's very confusing, but I try to keep it as simple as possible. So Revit origin point is arbitrary, so you can move it anywhere you want, right? But the only thing that's going to change is based on where you position your origin point and then how you acquire the coordinates. What I've said right now is that it's very confusing. I mean, for a lot of users, if you don't understand, I'm just going to walk you through how I would build the share coordinates. Now, this typically for share coordinates, I would not use it for, let's say, a simple building with a tower, right? It's too complicated. This only works if you have multiple, let's say, buildings in like huge swath of land. So let's assume that, for example, this train station we're going to be talking about is that how do you control each one, So how the shared coordinates control that. Now, how this shared coordinate works, I took a snapshot from Autodesk. This is just what they showed. So in DWG, they think that, okay, this is your origin point. When you put it into Revit, that's your survey point, and then your building point. And then what happened is that in this small little building, you should always refer to this. It's kind of like that, okay? It's, for a lot of users, it's very confusing. It doesn't really work. The reason why I say it doesn't work is that in AutoCAD reality is that your origin point is not here. It's like miles and miles away. They're always going to be using geodetic, okay? So geodetic means that the origin point is miles and miles away, but what Autodesk is trying to simplify is that, oh yeah, your origin point is that particular corner. So typically for our survey, like if we have to do this, my origin point for this would be this corner right here. That is how I start all my projects, is that I always follow the corner of the property line. Okay, that's always the case. Don't put it inside a building. I know that sometimes people will do that. The only time I do it inside a building is that if you're linking in a building and you know that the origin point is arbitrary, then yes, I would say put your origin point somewhere there. But when you acquire coordinates from your main file, what it does is that when you do shared coordinates, it will just plunk it right onto that position. Okay, but first you have to link your drawings into this, position it where you want it, acquire the coordinates. Once you acquire the coordinates, the next time when you link this into here, it'll position it right on top. So I'll just display it later on so you kind of understand. Now, why is it so complicated? Like, why do you think this is, like, why do they have to go all this trouble just to do this? Revit has a limit, okay? Revit has this 20 mile radius, which is like 32 kilometers. And what happens is that if you reach beyond that point, Revit just doesn't want to function, right? So that's why they have to do the shared coordinate things. It just makes, it's like a different way of doing things, okay? So that's the biggest issue, is that this shared coordinate thing, it becomes, it's so complicated, and sometimes trying to explain it to people, it just doesn't make sense. Now, Enscape. So if I have time, I'll probably talk about this clash detection kind of a thing. I know that in Revit, this is a huge thing. Most people would say, okay, get me to use Navisworks just to do clash detection and report. In most cases, who has time to learn Navisworks? Okay, if you have Enscape, like you just use it for rendering, it can be used as kind of like clash detection model. So what I did here in this screenshot is that, I just basically make the consultant's model to be a specific color, and then I'll put it into our architectural model just to see what object is what, so you can tell what's what. So how do you do this is that typically you have to open up your consultant models. I would save a copy, and then the first thing I would do is that you go to the object styles and change all their default material to some sort of a material specified for their particular model. So let's assume that you have green material texture. Then I would just say select all of that object and just say change it to green. And that way, regardless of what model they have, it's always going to be green. Now, this will not work if they have a material already applied to the object. So you have to do another step, is that you have to go in manually and modify the materials. But that's the disadvantage of it. Okay, limitation for Enscape. Unfortunately, it would not able to detect what model will clash with another, since this is a visualization. Probably in the future, I've talked to Enscape developer, and they're happy to kind of entertain this idea in the future, to give you like clash detection, able to report. There's no reporting function at the moment. And then the other thing is that I wish there's a one-click button where, if there is a link model inside your Revit, you link it in. I want to apply one material to that particular link so that it becomes a much seamless process. Unfortunately, there's no such thing. I've talked to a developer to say that, yeah, if a lot of people want to do this, that's a perfect way to go. Okay, good. I just want to check if my recording's there. All right. Enscape strength. Okay, the biggest thing I like about Enscape is that it's very easy. I'm pretty sure that you guys use Enscape. If you haven't used Enscape, it's just basically it's attached to Revit. It also attached to SketchUp and other software. Now, one thing about Revit is that you can just click on it. It will just pop up a menu with all this rendering already pre-rendered. It's a live kind of a rendering. So every time when you move, it constantly updates itself. One thing I like about this is that you're able to share 3D, so you can export the rendered model, and you export it out as a exe file so that you can share it with your consultants and owners, and they're able to kind of go in there, check it out, what model is, and yeah, they're able to look at it and see what went wrong. Okay. It also has the VR, so if you have a VR headset in like different offices or at home, you can actually open up the Enscape and then you can say enable VR. And then I think last week we did a demo kind of a thing just to look at it. It was pretty cool just to see what consultants, let's say their objects is clashing with the architectural objects. So when you go up the stairs, you will notice that there's lights that's clashing with it. And the other thing is that I don't want to spend time learning other software. I know that that's the biggest issue. People may not have time, so you need something that's quick and fast. All right, let's get onto the demo side. Alrighty, so let's open up Revit. Not right now. Okay, so I'm gonna start a new project. So I'm gonna start it with, let's say, a none for now. Let's go metric. So when you start any Revit project, and if you want to do, like, let's say consultant files, the first thing I would do is just start up with a brand new Revit file with nothing in it. So the first thing I would do is you go to VV, go to Site, okay, turn on this too, okay. Now what I like to do is that I like to create what's known as a reference plane, okay. Now what this does is that this is Revit's origin, like the hardwired origin point. While this thing can move, this origin point is in the software. So whenever you export it out, that is the location for that. Okay? I know that if you never use other software, like you only use Revit, you can just move it. You don't care about the origin point, that's fine. Don't worry about it. But in most cases, if you want to maintain, like, let's say various software, always establish this. I always call this origin X and origin Y. It's a good practice just to do it. Okay. Now the next thing you want to do is that you want to insert in a Revit file. Oh no, not a Revit file, an AutoCAD file that you're going to be using for, let's say, for your share coordinates. So the first thing I would do is that you just go Revit link. Okay. I'll go current view for now. Now the origin point, I always set it to auto center to center, preserve, I always turn this off. This one I would just go meters. I'll just use one of my samples. Okay, I just copied it from the Surrey one, so you kind of know the process. Okay, focus group, sharing coordinate samples. And right now I have two files. Okay, you have a main track, and this one is just basically the master plan that has lots of stuff. So I won't get too deep into that. So the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to like open up the main track. Right, it has all the tracks and everything. Put it in center. So it doesn't matter. Like if this has like a 0, 0 point, when you insert it into Revit, it's going to be like miles away. Sometimes Revit doesn't like it. So what I typically do is that we'll leave the origin points, like the coordinates, in this AutoCAD file, but you're just linking them in as center to center. So here I'm just going to just link them in. Okay. Right now it's there. Huge. So what you can do now is that you can move. Okay. So what I have to do in this particular file is you kind of have to establish where your 0, 0, project 0, 0 here. So I would just say survey and 0, 0 should always be the same. Do not move your survey and 0, 0 to be different. Reason why I said this is because later on you'll notice that if you make those two to be different, it can confuse you and can cause so much havoc. Okay, just from my experience, just never do it. So what I would do typically is that you kind of have to plan out where your AutoCAD origin point is going to be, because once you establish that inside Revit, that will be your origin point forever. So in this particular case, what I did here is that I have this set out to be my origin point, alignment, blah, 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 because that was the biggest, marker in that drawing, okay? But the unfortunate thing for this project is that they keep changing their track, so this origin point is no longer there. So what I did, they moved it quite a bit. So what I did is that every time when I receive files from consultant, I always take the origin point from the origin, do a circle, and then copy it and paste it into the new one just to see where's the origin point. Okay, so that next time if this is your this origin point got moved, at least that circle designate that has to be your origin point. Okay.
So you copy and paste your origin point from the previous file to the new file.
That's correct. You have to do that, right? Because what happens is that if you don't do that, this is where everything will break. Okay. So this is why it's very important, if you link them in and you have these coordinates from, let's say, consultants, always establish it. Right now I'm just going to say, okay, I'm going to establish it to be, this is my origin point somewhere. Let's assume that this one is my origin point. You could just do it, just move it here, just move it there, okay? Let's assume that I established that. Here, I'm just going to turn off my let's see, I'll go to site, I'll turn off the project origin point. Since the project base point is going to be the same, I'm just going to look at the survey. Now when you click on survey, you notice that there's always 0, 0, 0, there's nothing there. So how do you get the coordinates? So the first thing you do is that you would say, click on this and say acquire coordinates. Okay, once you acquire coordinates, click on that, you notice that it starts moving. Okay, your origin point got moved. So here I'm just going to go site, project base point. Okay, that's my project base point. And then you notice that this is for your survey points. Okay, it will automatically acquire the survey point from the AutoCAD. So now what happened is that your base point right now, when you look at this, you see that it gives you this number. Okay, so that's one thing. Basically the survey point got moved to the 0 based on this, and then this is my kind of like my new building origin point. Okay, once you have this, I would just recommend you save the project. I'll save this and call this civil track. Okay, once you have this, sadly I don't have the track already pre-built into this, but let's assume that this is going to be my track right here. So the next step you want to do, okay, it's open up your train station and you want to map this track with that. So how do you do it? Let's say I have the civil track, I have my station, don't worry, I just made a copy. Let's assume that this is my new track. I'm going to detach this. Yeah, hopefully this will not take that long. And also, what I'd like to do, if you always end up having, let's say, screwed up your share coordinates, what I did here in this particular file is that I made a copy. Let's see, standard focus group. I created a file called reset share coordinates. Okay, most often what this has is that it's just an origin point with the text, like model text on it. What this does is that if you run into problem, just link this into your file and acquire coordinates from this reset share coordinates. What it does is that it basically reset your coordinates back to 0, 0. You unlink it, and then you relink the file and move your position again and require the coordinates. So that's the process that I would do, right? Because what happens is that when you acquire coordinates and when you unlink it and you want to link in like the new file with the shared coordinates, it would not let you acquire the new coordinates, unfortunately. And that's a very terrible way of doing things, right? That's the one caveat of Revit, is that they don't tell you how to reset it back, because a lot of time they don't tell you. So you have to create a new file that has like a reset shared coordinates and then acquire new shared coordinates. Okay.
So this only has the project base point and
Survey base point at the same location. Yes. Yeah. But what I do is that when you reset shared coordinates, always pick origin to origin, so that that file is going to be placed on the origin point. Mm-hmm. And what happens is that when you acquire shared coordinates, it basically reset everything back to 0, 0. Okay? Because it's something that Revit, they haven't really done for, like, if you acquire shared coordinates, there's no way of resetting it back because it's there. You can delete it, it just doesn't help. Okay, right now it says that the number's truncated, that's fine.
Those files are really slow to open.
Yeah. Once you add more and more details, that's, yeah. I can understand why. Okay. Any questions so far with this? Share coordinates? Pretty easy. Yeah. I know if you're not really, if you don't understand it, that's fine. I mean, I try not to confuse people. I just want to show you guys like the step that I would take to do it, right? So the first step I did was that always establish your 0, 0, which is right there. The next thing you do is that you link in your AutoCAD file into your file, into your Revit file, and what happens is that you move your origin point to where you want the new origin point, and then you acquire coordinates. Once you acquire the coordinates, that becomes your new coordinates. And then now what happens at the next step is open up this file, link this civil track drawings into that, okay? And then what happens is that next step you have to do, okay, once I open this up and close the other file, let's say civil track, I'm going to close out of that. So here what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to go to the floor plan. Okay, let's say for example I'm going to go, no, not sea level, concourse. Yeah, let's go concourse. Okay, let's assume this is your file. So here I'm just going to go in there and say turn it off. Okay, since this has those shared coordinates, okay, I want to show you how to reset it back. So in here, I'm just going to get rid of this file. I'm just going to remove it. Okay, first thing you do is that if you want to reset it back, all you have to do is go Revit link. Here, I'm just going to go reset back, choose origin to origin, and hit open. Okay, go to 3D. Okay, I'm going to turn this off. Hide category. You see that there is a file called type me to reset shared coordinates. I don't know why I put that in. Anyways, it's just basically a marker, right? Just to say that, okay, this is shared coordinates. So the next thing you want to do is that you go into this, acquire coordinates, and select that. Now, if you didn't do this, this is the message you're going to get. Okay, let's say that you get rid of that, and I'm going to go in and Revit link that particular civil drawings. You get a message here. I'll just say origin to origin. Okay, you're not going to see anything until you have by link view level 1. Okay, let's assume that you want this to be the track, right? Let's assume that that is your rotate, place this particular one. Let's see, I'm gonna move it there. Let's assume that that is your that is one of your, yeah, let's assume that that's how I'm gonna do it. Now if let's say I've done that, I want to acquire coordinates. There we go. Oh, it's able to do it. Oh, that's good. Previously I when I did that, sometimes it won't do it. So here I was able to acquire coordinates. That's very good. I never knew that. Okay, good. So when you remove it, you can acquire coordinates, but sometimes it will not let you. Then please reinsert this coordinates, go in there, acquire coordinates, and click on that. Okay? But sometimes you're able to. If you remove it, then you're able to acquire it. But for this particular case, yeah, it works for me. So it may be different for everybody, because last time I tried it, it says, nope, you can't do it. Then I have to bring in that file, and then it's able to reset it. Okay? So once you've done that, let's assume that next time you want to open up a file, a new project. Let's assume that I'm going to go architectural. Well, before I do that, I should save. Okay? Let's see, I'm going to go save this. I'm going to just override it and saying that this is a change. Now, once you acquire coordinates from this particular file, you notice that the project north, you can actually turn it to true north, and what happens is that this will automatically rotate it to the file. So you don't have to go in there and manipulate where's your true north, because it's already set in. So all I have to do is just, what I did here is that I link it in, rotate it, put it where I want it, and then I go acquire coordinates. That's all you have to do. Okay?
I don't understand why you have to acquire coordinates. What does that do?
Well, acquire coordinates, what it does is that it basically takes this coordinates and apply it to this particular project. Okay? And what you want to do here is that acquire coordinates is just basically just position your building relative to this file, the civil file. Okay? That's all it does.
I see.
But your building point, let's just assume that here I'm just going to go in and go turn on the site. Okay? Your survey base point is going to change. Your building project base point, it's right there. It's not going to change. The base building point, it's not going to change. But you notice that here, once I acquire coordinates, it changes the true north, it changes this, it changes everything. Okay? Makes it very, very good if you see that it automatically changed that, so that's a good thing. Now, imagine if you want to bring both of those files into a new file. This is the coolest trick in here, is that here, I'm just going to show you. So when I go insert Revit file, so let's assume that I want to link in this particular file. Let's say I want to link in the change file, put in an origin point. Okay, position is there, so let's assume that here I'm just going to go to site, survey point. There we go. That's the position where it's supposed to be, right? Everything's fine. Now, if I acquire coordinates, like if I, let's say, link in that particular Revit file into this file, it would not work, right? So let's assume that here, if you go in and go origin to origin, it's not going to do anything. Okay, so if I go here, go to civil track, you notice that it's right there because it's origin to origin. I'm going to undo that. Let's see, get rid of that. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is that if you acquire coordinates, let's say acquire coordinates, let's say I'm going to acquire this coordinate, and then now if you go insert Revit and you go civil track and change that to by share coordinates, and when you hit open, what does is that this track will be right on that place. Let's say, for example, here. So that's how I do it, right? So by share coordinates, what it does is that it just takes it in and just, yeah.
It just places your file in the proper location.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And then insert another one and it just falls.
Exactly. Yes, that's how I do it. So right now, what it does is that it allows your file to be, coordinated. So yeah, that's basically the gist of it, right? It's just very, very simple if you understand the concept of it. The first thing I would recommend doing is that first you start out with the blank file with nothing in it, linking your CAD into that Revit file, so that that becomes the master file from all the coordinates and all the civil, where you have to share the file with the civil guys. So what you do, the next step is that pick where the project base point in that CAD file. I picked this as my origin point. Then what I did here is that I link in this particular file into this, and I rotate it based on where the civil mentioned where their grids is going to be for that station. So let's assume that that is one of them, and then I rotate it based on their recommendation, and then I position it where this is going to be. Once you've done that and acquire coordinates from this, now you're set. So next time when you have a new file, you link in, the Revit file here, you just say hit acquire coordinates. The origin points can be the same, doesn't matter where it is. Just I always maintain the origin point to be the same. It's like AutoCAD. You just say 0, 0, that's my 0, 0. Acquire coordinates. Next time when you have a different coordinates, like this one and that one has the same coordinates, then this one will position the coordinates the same as this particular file and auto it. Okay. Here you notice that there is an internal. Okay. There's always going to be like move instance to this. I wouldn't get too hung up on this. Don't bother with this, because this one, every time you say do not share, it wants to do something. It wants to save it back. So I just always tell people, just don't bother with this stuff, because if you do this, do not share, and then next time when you save and get out, it would just pop out the message, you want to override. It's like, no, right? I would always ignore it, right? So just keep it the way it's supposed to be, right? Then everything should be okay. Now, if you have to reset it back, let's assume that you do not want to share coordinates anything. So all you have to do is remove this. Okay, let's assume that that's my place. If you want to reset it, I'll link in this particular file. Reset share coordinates. I'll just say auto origin by origin. It's going to be here. Yeah, it's going to be tiny. Guess you can, yeah, it's going to be tiny. There we go. And what happened is that, watch if I, let's say, acquire coordinates, you notice that survey point moves back to that 0, 0. Okay, just to be aware, right? So that's how you do it. So for that particular case, there you go. Reset it back. Okay, so that's a backup plan. So that's how I kind of find like how you use it for shared coordinates. If you run into problems, just let me know. I'll help you kind of, how to set this up, because this is kind of like you need to backtrack. If you don't know the history of it, then yeah, sometimes you can get very confused, like where do I find the origin point? For AutoCAD side, you don't have to do much because you're relying on their coordinate system. So there, you just don't do anything. The only thing in Revit is that where you place the project base point based on your drawing. All right, that's pretty much it for the first part. So the second part I'm going to talk about is how do you create a coordination model?
So one question. For
Sure.
each station, you kind of rotated the track and put it in the
Yes, that's correct.
correct location, and
Yes,
then
acquire coordinates.
okay.
Yeah, that's how I do it. So if they send you a new track that has like a different alignment and stuff like that, then you have to release it, right? You have to say reset the coordinates, re-rotate their position based on their new track, because their track sometimes could be off 20 degrees or whatever, right? So it keeps changing, so you have to reset it back and then reposition it and reacquire it. Okay, that's how I do it. So you don't have to physically change the building itself, right? The building doesn't have to, oh, I have to take this building and rotate the whole thing. No, don't do that, right? Don't do that. That's a mistake. I mean, like, I've seen people done that. It's a mistake. Don't do that. So always rotate the CAD, right, based on where you want to position it, and then just acquire coordinates, and then you're set. Okay, so this one I kind of figured out in a couple of days. It's like, you know what? How do I create like a clash model without going through Naviswork? Because how many guys use Naviswork? No? Yeah. I'm not very fond of Naviswork, unfortunately. It has some useful tools, but for architects, all we want is just give me a visual and give me, like, ways to kind of detect how how each party clashes with each other. The only unfortunate thing about Naviswork I don't like is that a lot of their materials are really bad. I couldn't see stuff properly because when they do a report, it just shows you, oh, this is structural and this is electrical, and all the materials are all over the place. I want to have just a model where architects is the same material as, let's say, the proper material. All the other consultants are going to have red, blue, green, or whatever color you want. But unfortunately for Naviswork, it doesn't do that, right? So you could do it. You can say that, yeah, it does that, but yeah, last time I used Naviswork was like 2010, and I wasn't fond of it. So, all right, for this particular model, I'm just going to show you kind of quickly how I put my model into work. So the first thing you do is when you start up any meeting, focus group, I have a sample here. So let's say sample, do I have it? Enscape. So the first thing you want to do is that when you receive a file from consultant, let's assume that this is your consultant file. Let's say this is the structural model. Oh, sure, open it up. Save this model, current position, it's fine. So the first thing you want to do with this model is that you want to change the material to, let's say, a different color. Okay? Because right now, Enscape doesn't have the ability to change their material to a specific color. So what you have to do in Enscape to get this to work is to change their model to a different color. So right now, you notice that their color looks like this, right? It has a concrete, has everything. So you want to change it to just one color. So how I do it is you go to VV, okay, go to Object Styles, okay. Here you notice that there is like no material, okay. So what I typically do with this is that select all, go in here. I just choose the default. Oh, actually, yeah, you want to duplicate it and call this coordination red. Okay. Use the render appearances. The first thing you do is that when you click on this, go in here and choose plastic. You notice that there's an LED on. Okay, I always like to use LEDs. The reason why I use LEDs because if you do Enscape, LED means that at nighttime it's going to be glowing red. So if you're doing it at nighttime, you want to clash the model, it will just show you the red. Okay, so I choose that. You could do LED off. I'll leave it up to your imagination what you want to choose, but I just say, you know what? I just usually use red, LED, and then on and off. So I just say red. Okay, let's say okay. So right now they all have coordination red. Okay, now funny enough, it's not going to do anything to their model. It's only going to show part of it in red like this. So now what happened is that you have a model that has materials in it. So what I'm going to do is I go to material and change their FE CLT to, again, plastic. You're going to use this just for coordination. You're not going to use it for anything else. So what I typically like to do here is that I will save this as a separate file so that you don't mess up their coordination model. So here I'm just do the same thing. Just go LED, red. So all of the CLT has all red. When I hit OK, okay, good. And then here I'm just gonna go in. Yeah, that's the disadvantage for Enscape is that you have to go in there and manually modify what material. Let's say this one concrete gray. Again, I'm just going to go in here and just change this to plastic red. Okay. Oh, looks good. Well, let's assume that that's what you need. No, probably metal as well. I forgot about metal. So I go in here. Again, I'm just going to go in here, choose the appearances, and go into plastic red. Okay, this is the only thing. You could do it once, okay, and save that as a file. So every time when you receive a file from, let's say, a consultant, next time when you do a coordination model, take the previous version, and then you say transfer project standard, okay, and then say material. And what happens is that whatever the old material you modify with the red applied to the new one, it basically becomes red. Okay, so that's how I do it, like automatically kind of a thing. So if you have a process, this is how I would approach it. Okay, once you have a red and then you place all the models together, okay, then you use this called an Enscape. So right now I should open up a model with all the consultants in it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up the project that I've done with all the models, Revit, and I call it court model. So this one has everything, and then except that I linked in the coordination model with all the reds and all the yellows and all the greens, so you can see properly how it's done. So once you have that, then what you can do is that you can export that out. So Enscape has, like, this is a sample I'm gonna open up later on. Yeah, so while that is going, let me just go in here and open up the Enscape model. So once you export the Enscape model, this is sort of the information you're going to get. So one of the things I like about this is that it's a very clean model. You can see things through. It's not like, you know, fake visual thing. It's kind of like it's a realistic rendering. So the consultant can actually see what is there. Because what I find with Naviswork is that it's all shaded. It's very artificial. Sometimes very difficult to tell what red versus the other red because they're not uniform thing. And it's all shaded. It's very, yeah, it's very bizarre. Because if you ever done the Naviswork clash, they're very ugly. It's just not. It's not meant for architectural pleasing. It's meant for clash detection, and sometimes you just want to figure out where's this located because it's a program that clash a lot of objects and it will just do a report. And sometimes when you look at the screenshot, it's like very tiny. You cannot see where they are. But good thing they provide a map where it is. But unfortunately, just not something I like to get into. It's a lot of things. But if it's something like this, Enscape, what it does is that it allows you to explore. Okay, you can go in there. You become like the site inspector. Before you go to the physical site, you just go into the virtual site and pick up, okay, what's missing, and does this work? Keep, you know, doing screenshot and say, oh, I saw this problem, I saw that problem. You know, you can just go in and just keep doing screenshot and just paste it on Word documents. That's one thing that it's not Enscape. It's not there yet. Is that it's a visual rendering software. It's not for clash detection. But this capability, I see it in the future. If you guys really want to get into more VR, like construction, realistic, and stuff like that, this becomes a very powerful tool. And then it's like $29 a month just to use the license. I think it's a good investment for any company. It's only like $700 per year, so it's a good investment to get into. Yeah, sorry, my computer is really slow. All right, so this is, let's say this is the model. Okay, you don't see a lot of the materials until you go realistic, right? Yeah, this thing's gonna load slowly. Yeah, even with that, you notice that there is green, right? Green and all that stuff. What I did here is that I turn off the structural model, but you can turn them on if you want to. And what it does is that it basically has all this clash detection. There we go. There's a red. So what I did here is that it's just a visual cue to say, okay, if their model is on top of our model, which means good, right? So that's how you tell visually. And yeah, sorry, this thing takes long to load. I guess because I have lots of stuff loading in the background. Just want to give a screenshot. Okay, so you notice that, oh, there's a pipe in the middle of nowhere. So it's just a visual visual, right? It's just it's good to tell which consultant is what. So architecture is going to be like the true material, where all the other consultants going to be different kind of a material. I also put in like if you want to do like dimensions as well, like a 3D dimension, so that you can actually walk through it and say, oh, that's what height. We can actually put that in. I also put in the grid as well. So for this particular model, I add in like a grid system, so that when you do an Enscape, you know exactly where that grid's supposed to be. There's just a family itself. I'll probably share that information to people, like if they really want to use that.
So it's 3D grid?
It's not a 3D grid, it's a model grid, but it just enable you to kind of go in here.
To see it in Enscape.
Yeah, that's grid 55, and you can just keep walking through. Yeah, this is why I turned it red, right? Because here it's kind of like, it's like once you have a model on top of one model, it kind of dances around quite a bit. So this is why, like, it's visually distracting. But you can certainly put it in there just to see what's going on, whether or not your model is actually on top of each other. So if the model is like, for example, the structure, you notice that here they have an opening that is way bigger than, well, way smaller than what we have. So you notice that if it's a bright red, it means that, yeah, they want this opening to be very small, not big. So that's how you tell visually, kind of a thing. But the application for this is that you can go in here and say, okay, there is a couple of mishaps. Like for example, I've seen like a couple of like how this is going to work, right? And then some of them are actually touching the beam itself. So those are kind of like the idea of, you have a quick visual. And the nicest thing about this is that you can actually see the nighttime. Let's see, there you go. That's why I pick the glowing green, because you can actually see at nighttime much more clearly. And yeah, this is not going to work. This is lighting. You see that sometimes, yeah, you can't see it when they place all the items on the model, because a lot of them operate like AutoCAD, where they just place it in thinking that there's no structure there. But when you place all the models together and just give them a visual saying, look, you have a light there, then they understand, oh crap, we have to move that. All right. So I hope that this is very useful things. Enscape, I hope that I talk to those guys, and probably in the next version they'll have all this thing resolved, because I see there's a huge potential to use for the clash detection side. And this is like probably the easiest way to get into your model, because it's VR ready. You can actually hook up to your VR. I actually did that like last week. It was really nice, because you can actually see through all the faults, walk into the space and say, oh, that's not good. And the nicest thing I have for the grid system is that you're able to tell how high your duct is going to be, so they can make this quick decision whether this is okay or not, right? For client, this is a good visual tool, so you can walk into a meeting and just say, okay, how high this is going to be, so that they understand what's going on. All right, so that's pretty much it. Conclude. So if you guys have any question, feel free to message me or just ask me, so I could help you guys out. And share coordinates is not the easiest thing to learn, but once you learn the basic concept of how to acquire coordinates, how to position it properly, and then how to reset it, then you basically master the whole share coordinates. I wouldn't trust, like, one thing I tell people, don't trust that button internal, because that thing can just drive you nuts. Like, I don't know what they're trying to do. So yeah, so don't bother with Autodesk what they tell you, because Autodesk, I don't think they even have this thing figured out. All right, anyways, thank you.
Thank you very much.
No problem.